You are now listening to GB Podcasting.
Heyo.
Three, two, one. We are back.
What is up, everybody?
Hope everyone's having a wonderful day. You are now sitting down with myself, Brandon Staten.
And I'm Koty.
My lovely counterpart on the other side of the table. It's good to be back at it again.
It's very good to be back.
I want to start by saying that we were a little late on the whole Memorial Day, depending on when you're listening to this, but I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend full of Memorial Day shenanigans.
Which are always nice. The barbecue and the beer drink and the sunshine.
And the remembering.
Yeah. You know, it's something that sometimes goes for granted. But, you know, there is a purpose behind the holiday and it being a holiday. So it's nice to take a minute. You know, I hope everyone took a minute to sit down and think about and remember the people who make it possible for us to be able to sit down and have conversations and other people sit around and listen to them without being persecuted for it.
Yeah. It's something that definitely sets us apart from anywhere else in the world, and by no means is that entire weekend or that day supposed to be about sitting around and grieving, but it does play a part, and it's also a time where you should drink beer, grill out, go to the lake, beach, wherever you can find water.
Utilize the freedoms you've so been given.
Because that's what it was done for, is the freedoms that we, act out today. So we definitely wanted to say our part on that. Very thankful for, anyone who's served and still serving and allowing us to do what we do.
100%. I could not agree more.
Moving forward.
Yeah.
Topic of the day, communication.
Communication, or healthy communication to
no,
draw
unhealthy communication.
There is unhealthy communication out there.
We won't talk about that, though.
Today's topic is healthy communication.
No, mainly just the importance of it and how I feel communication is a base layer to anything, any relationship really that you have with anyone. We had some trouble figuring how we wanted to go with backtrack a little farther. This was one of the main reasons we started this podcast.
Yeah.
Not only for you and I to become better communicators, but also to show people that there is sort of a lost art of communication as far as
people talk to each other so frequently, but people communicate very little. I know that sounds super confusing to say, but if you think about the majority of your day, it's the same old run-of-the-mill catch-up conversations with really the same people most of the time.
For the most part, yeah.
And not a lot of getting down to the nitty-gritty. And then more and more nowadays, when things do get down to the nitty-gritty, it's just an argument. Someone gets so mad about something that you've said that they disagree with that they don't hear a word that you say for the rest of the entire conversation. And that was one of the big pushing points for me, is wanting to be a part of us starting this podcast, is getting back to people understanding that we can talk about the tough things and have a good conversation about it without you leaving mad.
Right.
And it is, I didn't know how much of an impact it had made on me doing this podcast until very recently.
Right. We've had some troublesome times as far as our inner circle, I guess you would call it. So very recently, Koty and I have moved in together. A lot of things have changed. New place to record, new place to live.
Yeah.
New roommates.
Yeah. New business ventures.
Which are details soon to come.
Yeah.
I feel like I really want to nail down how I want to present that to everybody before we get, on the podcast and start talking about that. But we're very close.
And we're planning on having a meeting for our business when we finish recording this podcast today. So maybe that information will be coming sooner than later to all you guys.
Absolutely. But let's dive in a little more to our communication issues, to put it blatantly, that we've had recently.
Okay, so very recently, it was just the other day, yeah, me, Brandon, and Bobby sat down to address some of the issues that we were having as an inner circle group, being whether that be as roommates or as business partners, just as people entering into a relationship in general. We were having issues. And it was, it's time to have that come to Jesus moment where you bring things out to light and get it hashed out.
Right.
And
which I want to kind of add that come to Jesus moment that you speak of was only created by the lack of communication over an extended period of time. Almost, I think when it happened, you called it a buildup of uncommunicated issues and thoughts, ideas, you know what I'm saying?
And those have a way of coming to head, but that's what happens. If things are not communicated effectively all the time, things just continue to build up until you hit a breaking point where everything gets spewed in a very short period of time, and a lot of things typically get looked over because so much information's flying at one time.
Right.
Which effectively also makes you an ineffective communicator.
Yeah. Because there's a way to go about it. I mean, especially if you're not the best communicator, which I feel like a lot of people fall into that category, myself being one of them, that you only make it harder on yourself. Because if you have to, think about it, if you have to communicate something to someone else, you're going to do a much better job the simpler and smaller that thought is to communicate it. Now, if you've got a really big, something that's been weighing on you for a long time, or rather maybe a whole boatload of little things that may not necessarily...
5 or 6 little things,
yeah,
or one big thing that carries an exponential amount of weight, they gum you up.
Yeah.
It makes it hard to think clearly, it makes it hard to articulate clearly, and it makes it very hard to communicate clearly. And, so that's one of the biggest points. I mean, so I'm not saying that situation wound up being incredibly impactful and useful, but that's not to say that it couldn't have been avoided and communicated more effectively prior to that.
Right.
And it would have been a much easier situation to handle at a much smaller impact.
Incrementally, maybe.
Yeah. Rather than, sometimes it takes that, though. Sometimes it does take sitting down, hashing things out, which I'm totally on board with. I think that that's a very effective way of making change happen. I think that sitting down and hashing out is a very good way to take a problematic scenario and nip it in the bud before it becomes a detrimental scenario.
Right. And it's just like with anything else, the more you do it, the better you get at it. Mm-hmm. And, you're going to deal with that all through life with any and everyone you meet. You're going to have disagreements, disgruntles, miscommunication. I think that is something that I really want to touch on today, is so many times when people think that they're communicating effectively, or they, maybe very recently dealing with, what we're talking about, it even prior to, I've used the saying recently that there are good intentions that have been misplaced. And the same thing can be done with communication. When you feel like you're maybe communicating in what you would feel is the proper way, but in reality, you've not went about it the way that it needs to be done. And that miscommunication is a very false sense of communication. So it's...
to you, it seems like you communicated very well, and to the person who's trying to understand the point you're trying to get across,
yeah,
it hits them the wrong way.
Right.
And you walk away from the conversation feeling great about it, and they walk away absolutely obliterated by how confused they are about what point you're trying to get across. And
right. So how do you prevent that? How do you prevent that from happening?
Being a good enough communicator to recognize the body language of the people you're talking to.
Right.
Understanding when someone just is giving you that feeling, that vibe, that they're just not following what you're trying to say. And that's part of becoming an effective communicator, is noticing those warning signs.
Right.
Also, part of it is being as good of a listener as you are a talker.
There you go.
And that is a point that kills people. A lot of people, as soon as you get them rolling, you can get them rolling as a communicator and having that conversation. But as soon as it's their turn to talk,
Yeah.
they just talk until their point has been said, and then they're done.
Mm-hmm.
They say their piece and they're out. And so if they're not an effective listener, then they have no idea what your understanding of what they said was, because your response is going to tell you a lot.
Absolutely.
How someone responds to what you say will give you tons of clues as to whether or not they understood you the way you were trying to get them to understand you.
And that just elaborates on the dynamic of a conversation and communication as a whole. I was over here grinning, trying not to laugh because I was waiting. I could see it like start to come up, and it just took you a while to get there. But the difference between listening and hearing is just
Exponential.
yeah, it's crazy at how, I think a lot of my communication problems is I may have not communicated in a way that other people understood or really grasped or listened to what I was, saying. And I think, one, it's on the person for not, actually hearing somebody out for what they have to say. But at the same time, I kind of feel like that was on me too. If I told you, for example, hey, Koty, that light's red, and me and you are headed down the road, and that light turns red, and I say it, and you don't make a gesture, you don't acknowledge me, you don't anything. I feel like that's kind of on me too. Hey, I didn't communicate that well enough. Maybe I need to speak up. Hey, Koty, that light is red. And very simple form of
Your articulation of what you have to say is very important.
right, because we all hear things differently. We all collect information differently. You could go back to the elementary teaching tactics of you've got visual learners and audio learners and all of that sort of thing, but nobody's the same. And some people don't pick up on, say that I don't want to come to blows, but I'm taking, jabs at somebody, and I think that they should be comprehending what I'm, kind of poking at without actually starting an all-out argument or something, but they may not even that right over their head. And
I think a good tool for people to remember also is recognize what people are doing while you're talking to them.
right.
If I'm coming down the hallway one day and you are asking what's going on as far as our plans for that day in the middle of me just coming past you in the hallway, you might want to follow up at some point and make sure that I heard what was going on.
Right.
Or if we're sitting across from each other and I'm looking down, scrolling through my phone while you're talking, and I'm just kind of occasionally like looking up, giving you a nod, like I would take it with a grain of salt. How effectively that I was listening to what you had to say. Does that make you a bad communicator? No. That instance is entirely on me. Catching someone in passing is on both people for not for me for not stopping back. I'm sorry. What did you say? I was doing something, and you for not following up and being like, yeah, I noticed you were doing something there. Did you hear what I said about the plans for the day?
Right.
I say this so much on the podcast, and I hate that. It just comes back to being mindful. So much of the crap that we talk about, I always end up saying that when we're recording, but it does. It comes back to being mindful. It's being aware.
Mm-hmm.
So many of the problems in society could be fixed from people just being a little bit more aware.
Communication being one of those things.
People being aware of how you communicate and how people interpret your communication are very important things. That's how you get across everything you ever try to push information on someone else with.
Right. Kind of, okay, so tell me how, I keep thinking back to, it kind of ties into what we were just talking about, but for some people, I feel like that unsureness of how well the communication was sent and received causes them to, well, I made an attempt, I don't want to step on any toes, or I don't want to seem overbearing or anything like that. It's for a prime example, let's get personal with it. Today, I was planning on getting my front end aligned on my truck. And a buddy of mine who works at a shop had told me that he could take care of it this evening. And I contacted him around lunch, and we were all good to go. And he got back to me with he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to get to it, put it that way. And as that's rolling through my head, I didn't hear from him for the rest of the evening. And I just let it be. I was like, well, wow. Thanks a lot for getting back to me. You really nailed that one. I guess I'll go home. I was kind of, I wasn't angry with him. I'm sure he probably had a reason, but I was a little upset, a little irritated.
Irked.
And irked is a marvelous word. But looking back on it, I really think that I shouldn't have been afraid to step on any toes. And, like, what would it have hurt for me to follow up with him? And hey, I know you said you were going to do this, and I know I said that I could be here then. Like, where you at? What you got going on? Is this still possible? What would that have hurt? But for some reason, I didn't want to, you know what I'm saying?
And I tend to look at it this way, as far as my understanding of that, is that someone will always tell you if you're being overbearing.
Yeah.
That's just something people don't tolerate very
How
well.
often does that happen?
I know.
Very rarely, I
Yeah,
think.
but-
because people, kind of, by no means am I saying be extremely aggressive in how you communicate, but sometimes if you just, you're not,
But people are more willing to tell you if you're being overbearing. No one can tell you if they don't hear what you had to
Right,
say.
exactly.
So if say I'm doing something one day and you text me and I unlock my phone and it opens that message, but I unlock my phone for a reason and I just swipe away that message and go to do what I'm going to do, and then I forget to text you back, I didn't even remember that you texted me,
Right.
so I'm not going to be like,
You're not doing it intentionally.
oh man, I just forgot about him. No, that's never going to happen. I'm going to move on with my day, and then 6 hours later, I'm going to go to send a text message to somebody that's going to pull open your message and be like, shit.
Yeah.
And you're like, why didn't you text me back, you asshole? But if you text me 9 times when I'm at work and I haven't had the chance to respond yet, yeah, I'm going to hit you back and be like, hey, I'm working. I'll get to you when I get the chance.
Yeah.
People are way more apt to tell you when you're over communicating, and they're pretty much unable to tell you if you're under communicating.
Yeah.
So I would much rather have someone be like, whoa, step back, than
Slow your roll.
than to ever, spend so much time irritated because I was ineffectively communicating to someone.
Right.
Ineffectively, damn.
And in that same instance too, so like for me, waiting to hear back from somebody or not sure if I'd communicated properly, one of the big problems that I have is, and I think this just stems from me being so, I wouldn't say wound tight, but my brain and my mental is normally chucking along pretty good all the time. I don't know if you could put that in ADHD or there's probably some sort of something, but I'm constantly running, and that leads to assumptions sometimes. And I've been told here recently that I need to woe down on the assuming. And today was a perfect opportunity for me to work on that. And I step back and I'm like, look, there's an infinite amount of possibilities at why that didn't work out, why I didn't hear back, why it didn't happen. Don't jump to assumptions. Just let it be. If I'm not going to take the effort to try and re-communicate, then I don't need to do anything at all, because I feel like that is the only option at that point, is try to re-communicate. Because if you're not going to try and re-communicate, then you don't need to go to making any assumptions. You don't need to go to shaming or bashing or wallowing in sorrow or whatever the circumstance may be. So...
And, I do want to clarify something, though. I am a firm believer in making your point of communication. If you don't get the response that you need from a communication point, reach back out.
Yeah.
Make your second attempt to communicate. If you don't hear back on your second attempt to follow up your communication, leave it alone.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than a harper. It is. It's the most miserable thing in the world. But take your second chance. I mean, there's totally a chance anything could have caused your first attempt at communicating with someone to fail.
Right.
So it's always worth that second attempt. If that second attempt fails, let it go. Because then you're effectively communicating against yourself anything further.
Right.
It's going to make people want to work with you less. And the whole point of communicating with people is to have relationships and to be efficient and be successful.
Yeah.
That comes back to, communication is very important in your everyday life for your everyday relationships. And it becomes exponentially more important the more value those relationships hold. So whether that be with a significant other or in your professional realm, those relationships are very important. They're very lucrative. They take an impact on your success. So whether it is for feelings or for money, the value of that relationship also means that the communication is that much more important.
Right.
And we're in a particularly tight spot because me and you do this together, we live together, and we're going into business together. That is 3 very significant places for problems to arise, and 3 very significant places that require a lot of communication.
Right.
If we drop the ball on our ability to communicate with each other, we got big problems.
At any point in time.
Yeah.
And I understand. So there are some things, in my opinion, and I'm sure there are plenty of other people and yourself that would agree, there are some things that are easy to communicate, and there are some things that are very hard to communicate. And I think that is one of the things that I learned from just everything we've had going on here recently is some things are just downright damn hard to communicate. But that doesn't mean they don't need to be communicated.
That is, sometimes you don't like having difficult conversations. No one likes sitting down and having difficult conversations. That conversation we had the other day was absolutely no fun for us all 3 to sit down and have. It was incredibly necessary, and they do need to happen.
And I'm very glad it happened.
Yeah, me too. But that doesn't make it any easier to have the conversation.
No, not in the moment. But hindsight's 20/20. But something about not only being able to effectively communicate something that you've been struggling to communicate. That's overcoming something in general, which is nice. But at the same time, when you have those really, really hard discussions with somebody, it adds to that relationship.
It does. It's a moment you overcame together, which is always, you need that.
Yeah. How do you get better at it?
Unfortunately, practice.
By just facing it head on.
The only way to get better at difficult conversations is having difficult conversations. And approach. I think the biggest thing I would give people advice on to work on as far as having difficult conversations is to not allow your emotion to outrun your brain.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, that's the key to having those difficult conversations. If you're having a difficult conversation with someone you care about, you have to understand that whatever they're saying that is inevitably going to irritate you is not being said out of spite.
Ill-mannered.
They're saying it because they care about you, and whatever it is causing issues. And if you can take the 10 seconds in your brain to push back the immediate feeling of rage that comes and allow thought and reason to flood back into your brain rather than just blood from you being irritated, the conversation goes a lot more smoothly because it just you have to take it from a sense of understanding that this person is hurt by an action that you were partaking in, so that they're going to come across as a little more aggressive than they probably should, and you need to not come across as defensive as you want to.
Right.
And that meeting in the middle of me as the person approaching you trying to tone back my aggression and the person who is listening trying to tone down their defensiveness is the effective way to have that difficult conversation. Right. It's hard to do. I'm not telling you that is an easy thing to do by any means.
Right.
But being mindful of it and thinking about it, the next time someone approaches you with a difficult situation and your immediate thought is to get irritated, let that point that I just gave you be what floods your mind before you even think about how to respond. Being like, oh, if I take 10 seconds right now to think about a response without just blurting out the thought of irritation that just flooded my brain, like, I promise you that whole conversation goes a lot more smoothly. You will calm the aggressor down very quickly, and you will calm down very quickly, and you will have a much better conversation. Rather than sitting across from each other and yelling till you both don't make any sense, and then you leave the situation without coming to a conclusion and wasting both your times. You just both got some frustration out and you move on, which will mend the relationship for a very short period of time.
Temporarily.
That is what people miss about those hard conversations. Is more often than not we have knockdown dragouts with somebody, and you both get pissed and you split for a couple hours, and you come back and you both feel better, so you get back into your routine. Well, and then
the problem was
and
not
then the
fixed.
next week the same
Right.
problems have been happening. You've been building up that irritation again, and then that weekend you're having the same conversation
Even harder
again.
the second time to communicate.
Yeah,
this.
rather than the first time. So take your time to calm down. Take your time to have the conversation effectively, as working together as far as not being defensive and not being too aggressive. And then at the end of the conversation, before any difficult conversation concludes, you need to ask or, think for yourself, where do we go from here? Mm-hmm. What are our steps to go from this conversation? Because if you leave without any conclusion, you're just wasting your time and your energy, and those conversations are exhausting. I'd been away 2 hours the other day when we started that conversation. And, man, going to work, I was freaking exhausted.
Yeah.
It drains your brain.
Mentally, it's
so you don't
taxing.
want to have those conversations frequently. Those kinds of difficult conversations don't need to be had every day. But when they do happen, you need to make them as productive as possible. So
use that opportunity
to fix larger issues. That way they don't happen more frequently than they need to. Because they are a necessity. Big conversations are a necessity. Cutting down the impact that they have, and two, the frequency of them coming up is also very important. But those conversations are a necessity, and they will continue to happen for everybody all the time. Things are going to boil over.
With you could have one of those conversations with a roommate. You could have it with a family member. You could have it with a boss, a coworker, a stranger on the side of the road.
People boil over.
Yeah.
When they boil over is completely situational.
Right. Out of everybody's hands, even their own. Emotions are powerful.
And you see it all the time. Someone's going through a divorce at home, and then you walk by them one day and just say the wrong thing, and you're the one that they break on. And then you're in a heated conversation with someone whose real problems aren't stemming from y'all's conversation, but you're the one dealing with it. So you need to be an effective communicator to get out of that situation effectively.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're coming to blows with somebody.
Okay, so question for you that you hit it earlier, and I wanted to say something, but I didn't want to interrupt the conversation where it was headed. But the defensiveness from people, it kind of baffles me. I don't really know. I think it was something that I don't know if it was maybe parenting or how I was raised, the experiences that I've went through, but it's something that I feel like I've done pretty well with, taking criticism and things like that, is just everyone's first reaction in any instance when it comes to things that are hard to talk about or whatever it is, they get extremely defensive, even without somebody attacking them. It's one thing if somebody comes at you to put your guard up and get in the defensive mode, but a lot of the times, like that conversation we were having the other day, at one point we were, I know I'm upset right now, and I know you're probably upset right now, but none of this is in like a demeaning manner, or in no way or shape or form am I trying to attack you. I genuinely care about you, and I care about our relationship, and I am only bringing this up to improve it.
To mend it.
Right.
And to me, it's human nature. It's something that you struggle to understand, and to me, it's people. It doesn't matter.
It just is what it is.
It doesn't matter if you say something coated in sugar and lollipops. If it's something that someone can take offense to, guards are going up. I mean, it doesn't matter your tone. It doesn't matter how you approach it.
So is that human nature nowadays, or do you think it's always been like that?
To an extent, it is. It's always been and always will be.
May have gotten just a little bit worse.
It's a little skewed. Yeah, people have thinner skin than they ever have.
Right.
That's the way of the world these days.
Very good way of putting it.
But that reaction is truly human nature that you can't get around. I think it is just more apt to happen anymore.
Right.
It's easier to offend people. So 60 years ago, a comment that was a normal conversation that someone saw as constructive is now a full-blown attack. And that it gets people, but that's just that's something that we have to overcome living in the world these days.
Something else you need to be mindful of.
Yeah, that people are going to get defensive. It doesn't matter what you say. I mean, it like if you're saying, "Hey, I think you could do this better," it's, "Hey,
I'm automatically doing a trashy ass job."
Yeah, that's how your brain comprehends it. It's like, first of all, I thought I was doing a pretty decent job at that, but thanks for being a dick. When really it's just like, oh,
hey, I know how. Yeah.
Like when really all that person's trying to say is like, "Yo, like I'm trying to fix the problem that you're doing," and all it takes is for you hearing it, and you're making yourself better. It's hard to see things that way. It really is. That's something that over the last 6 months I've gotten a lot better at being like, whew.
Yes.
Take literally just a few minutes, reread what that person had to say, and try to understand why they said it.
Bingo.
Before you ever make a single response.
So that's what I mean when I say,
a lot.
Whenever I'm saying I don't get defensive, I get defensive, but I am very mindful it's almost like I've gotten really good at identifying the instant I put my guard up, and I'm like, wait, no, don't. We're not going to get anywhere.
I can feel it.
Yeah.
Now. I'm like, that thought is completely irrational. Shut the fuck
up.
Just shut up. What the fuck are you thinking, man? Like, it does it, but it gets you, and that's your brain. Your brain does it in a split second. Like, someone's not even done with what they're saying, and your brain's already like, fuck that guy. And you're like, whoa, I don't even know what he's talking about anymore.
I don't even think he meant it like that, man.
But it is. I don't know what it is about people that make it's ego.
I think ego has a lot to do with it.
But it is. It's ego. That is your ego literally coming out and being like, hey, fuck you. I am great at what I do. And, controlling your ego is important. Your ego is a huge part of your confidence, which honestly, I think that confidence is inherently overlooked for how important it is. Being a confident person is incredibly important. It's what keeps you from getting run all over by people.
True.
Having a big ego is incredibly detrimental.
Right.
But
not knowing how to suppress that ego.
But but to me it's not that I don't want you to have a big ego, because that ego is what drives inner confidence. Mm-hmm. I want you to be able to control that ego and understand that, I want you to utilize your big ego for the situations that is important for you to pep yourself up a little bit and know when to shut it down and stay humble and be like, oh, okay, be able to take your notches down a little bit every once in a while and taking criticism is important.
Extremely.
And not letting criticism take you down to the bare minimum of what you were is also important. That's why being able to control your ego to not let things tear you all the way down, but to not also not let you understand what someone was trying to say because your ego's in the way.
Yeah.
It's super complicated, but that's just something that we got to work on.
I think all of that just goes to show even more so how dynamic communicating can be. There's so much that goes into it, and all you have to do is drop the ball anywhere. and boom, it crumbles. And it just takes practice. It takes mindfulness and awareness, like you were talking about. It's not something that, because think about it, if you're not mindful of it and aware of it, the only way you would ever be brought to your attention is by somebody else saying something, and heaven forbid somebody say something, because then there you go with that ego again.
I'm a shitty communicator. What?
So by all means, definitely listen to what people have to say, but the problem starts by you identifying to yourself, like sitting down, maybe not literally sitting down with yourself with a cup of tea, but think about how well your last difficult conversation went. If you can, maybe you're a little better off than some people, and that was 10 years ago, but the last difficult conversation you had, think about how you handled it and how you could have handled it differently, or just
I'm not telling you to go through your life with a fine-tooth comb and overanalyze every conversation you have. But, conversations are incredibly complex. You're battling your inner thoughts, your inner emotions, and you're also trying to break through and understand someone else's thoughts and someone else's inner emotions. There's a lot of places that can go wrong. So approaching conversation from a point of understanding is one of your key components. Say I am very in tune with my thoughts and what I'm trying to convey to you, so I'm not struggling to find a way to put my thoughts into words, but you are having trouble hearing what I'm trying to say because you're very defensive and you're running through what you're trying to say in response, and so you're not able to comprehend what I'm trying to say. That mishap is enough to trigger me and to get me angry, and then I lose track of everything. And I was in a good place coming into that. So me as a person, I would need to understand that I need to change how I'm communicating and try to get you off of that ledge so that you can hear what I'm saying. And that is being an observant communicator. That is being an understanding communicator. That is the part of being a good communicator that is difficult because it oftentimes means you need to bite the bullet and reapproach to fix the other person you're trying to talk to before you push them to a point where they break you.
Right.
Because that's any situation ever. Either you reapproach and fix it, or you two butt heads until someone breaks.
Yeah.
And that's not enough. That's the point. Conversations aren't a competition.
Yeah.
So you need to find a way to that middle ground, or you're fucking ruining it.
Right.
You're failing.
I'm just trying to picture like the thought of two people sitting down to have conversation just to compete. Who can talk louder, make the more best, like the more
best.
the more
you
best
just lost.
Damn it.
Best points.
But
No,
yeah, that it seems funny, but I guarantee you it happens a lot more.
Oh, it happens all the time, dude. I saw these two dudes the other day arguing with each other, and one was a really short guy, and one was about a 6'7" dude, and they were arguing face to face. I'm talking nose to nose. So one was chest back, screaming
over.
upward, and the tall dude was right down in his fucking face, half hunched over, and they were screaming at each other. But it was like an overly confident little man and probably a little bit of an underconfident, aggressive large man.
Right.
And those two personalities clashed, and it was who could yell the loudest the closer to the other one's face. It was like their tongues were touching. They were so close. It's just gross. But
What are you guys doing? Oh, nothing. We're communicating.
are you guys making out? No, we're fighting. With your tongues? That's gross, man. Whatever. But nothing came out of that conversation. Neither one of them was successful in anything because they were just as loud as they could, spewing their points at the exact same time.
Right.
2 inches from each other. I'm like,
And that's the worst. That is literally the worst when you are taking the time to articulate something, and especially, this is where I was at the other day, when you're trying to effectively communicate really, really well or really good intent or intentions, and they don't get listened to. That right there is enough to just me as a person set me off.
Oh, yeah,
So like
it spins you up.
if I'm gonna sit down with you, I'm doing my best. I'm giving you 100% to effectively communicate with you, not only in what I'm saying, but how I'm saying it and when I'm saying it. Which I think when gets overlooked a lot because people with pauses and things get really weird nowadays. It's I don't know, but it's a problem. And I think that one of the easiest ways to destroy any of that is to just, for whatever reason, not listen to somebody. Because, why open your mouth? I don't know many people that just talk to hear themselves talk. I know a couple, but, they can get off to that on their own. But, it's, to bring it full circle, there's a whole lot more to conversating than talking. And I think that's what a
100%.
lot of people just automatically assume. Like the two guys that were, tongue fighting.
tongue fighting. This is tongue fighting.
Yeah.
No, but I completely agree. I think that like I was saying before, it's your job to not let someone that is not understanding you spin you up and ruin your train of thought. But you, as the listener, it's your job to recognize someone trying to communicate effectively to you and not let yourself get so spun
Right.
up. If you need a minute to process what I'm saying and think without me continuing to talk and getting you more worked up and confused,
Tell me.
say something.
Yeah.
Take 30 seconds in silence, and I'll sit here and contemplate what I'm going to say or what I just said to see if I did it effectively.
Yeah.
And then we'll start back. And all it takes is one moment for you not screaming and saying, hey, that was a lot to process, and I'm really trying to say what I want to say in response to you. It's just going to take me a minute to get it lined out, to say it the right way.
Right.
9 times out of 10, no one is ever going to come back at you just pissed off that you just said that. Like, this motherfucker needs to think before he talks to me. No one approaches it that way.
Yeah.
And I think that part of the issue, though, with why someone as a listener, it's very hard for them to take that moment, is those difficult conversations also are more oftentimes than not passionate conversations.
Right.
And passion has a very, very good way, just like rage, of outpacing your brain.
Yes.
And that's what it boils down to in all of this, is emotions are incredibly powerful. Not allowing those emotions to outpace your train of thought is an essential part of being an effective communicator.
Right.
That's all it is controlling your own emotion and your own thought and your own pace in a conversation. Don't let someone bully you in a conversation. Just keep hammering points at you until you can't get the chance to respond effectively.
Yeah. So quick tip from myself.
Yes.
I know it's not completely possible for you to, the next time you're in a heated conversation or a passionate conversation, to just, first off, to be mindful of it. That's hard enough in itself. But two, it's very hard for somebody who's never done it before to, I'm getting mad, let me shut off that anger. So what I suggest that anyone does is, when you have that initial defense mode or whatever that initial reaction is emotionally, put it on hold for like 30 seconds. And at the end of those 30 seconds, and I don't mean put it on hold, close your eyes, shut your ears, and just sit there in oblivion. Put it off for 30 seconds while you listen to what's going on. Become as aware as you can be of what's going on around you, what's being said, how they're saying it, everything. And then at the end of that 30 seconds, if you really still feel like blowing your load all over that guy, then do it.
No, but that got me tickled. But no, I agree, because there are definitely times where someone's being a dick.
Yeah.
There are.
Yeah.
And I'd be the first one
You'll
to
run
tell you
into
that.
those a lot.
But that all it takes is a few seconds of getting past that anger to realize how you should progress.
And how misplaced it is.
And if your brain has time, to go, whoop, I didn't need to be angry at that.
Yeah.
And it can work its way back into that conversation and where it's coming from. You're golden. You can finish that entire conversation without being overly heated. I won't tell you you won't be irritated. Being irritated is okay. Going full on rage monster and not being able to see, hear, or think is not okay. You can't.
It's kind of useless.
Then we're not communicating.
Yeah. You and I were making fun of it before this, about, just men in general. Like, that's how we deal with it. I don't know what to say.
Getting
Let me break
frustration.
something.
Yeah. But, but all it takes is it's literally 10 seconds for your brain to go, that was really dumb to be angry about. And you're back in.
Yeah.
Or if it's something that's a legitimate reason to be angry about, it probably won't take you 10 seconds to
Yeah.
hear the next thing that's like,
Wait a minute.
this guy is not speaking to me from love in a place of understanding, trying to make something better. They're attacking me.
Yeah.
There's a big difference in those conversations. And a lot of times in 30 seconds, you can tell whether something is someone trying to approach you in a healthy way or someone trying to approach you in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
But, so many people are so reactive. It's a split second of anger, and they're mad for hours because they never let their brain slow down. It's just you're mad, and then your brain runs. and you're done. I mean, you're not going to hear things for hours. You're that worked up. And
You give into those emotions, and
I've been that angry. I mean, everyone's been that angry where you can't hear, you can't see, you can't think. You're just blind rage, and all you need to do is break something. That might be a man thing. I'm not positive, but it'll make you feel better, but it doesn't fix your issue. The next time that exact same problem is brought up to you, even if it is in a better way, it's immediately going to trigger you being that angry again.
Oh yeah, we're creatures of habit, and if you temporarily fix something one time by breaking something, heaven forbid you're out somewhere and somebody says something ill-mannered, I need something to break. It's not effective.
No. Communication is effective and something we need to practice.
Yeah.
And I'm not telling you to have practice arguments with people. I'm just saying that when you're having difficult conversations, be mindful, one, that difficult conversation is happening.
Yeah.
When it's over, look at where you stand with that person and how the conversation went. That is practicing communication, is your replay of that communication.
Yeah.
You don't get to practice live moment. You don't get to practice during game time.
Well, okay, so my final thought on it.
Okay, I'm ready for a final thought. I think we've been going a pretty good while.
I think my bladder's ready for a final thought. But since you just said it, it was something that I wanted to not end on, but hit it before we ended. What were you just saying? I started talking about my bladder and got all confused.
Talking about not being able to practice during game
Right,
time?
no, the practicing of communication. So if you're somebody who needs to get in shape, or say you want to get stronger, just as an example, you have to go somewhere. You have to go out of your way, out of your time to go somewhere, get in a gym, or get somewhere where you can train and do that. It's a little harder to do. You have conversations, or the average person has conversations every single day. And that's why it irritates me that people can't communicate effectively. You have time and time and time and time again to practice effective communication, and we don't do it. Why? Because that's tough. It's too hard. It requires me to be in the moment.
It does. It requires you looking back on your moment and looking back on how that conversation went, how it could have gone better. That reflection, that self-reflection, is exactly what makes you a better communicator. And we're unwilling to do it. We're lazy.
We are.
But it stems from laziness. That's why we're not effective communicators, is because we're freaking lazy. We put the most minimal amount of effort into every conversation we have, and that's why we've fallen off as effective communicators, rather than taking time and putting energy into doing things well.
I agree 100%.
We're talking about Ronald Reagan being such a powerful speaker earlier. It's because, man, men during that time, people during that time, weren't fucking lazy.
Right. They couldn't be.
They put time and effort and energy into being good people. And I'm not telling you that everyone's shitty anymore. That's not what I'm trying to get at. It's just that people don't try as hard to be good people anymore.
Yeah.
They just think you're either a good person or a bad person, that you can't become a better person if you're... I'm a good person, so I'm just going to stay this good of a person for the rest of my life because I'm pretty decent.
Okay.
They don't believe in becoming a better person anymore. It's just you're either a good person or a bad person. I don't care how good of a person you are. I don't care if you're fucking Gandhi. Like, you could be a better guy somewhere along the line. And that's all it takes, is being mindful of that and wanting to be better.
Yeah, the
to
want's
be driven.
important.
I said the other day, it's important that, we do continue to push each other.
Yeah.
Those conversations are difficult. And each of the three of us have different standards for how we maintain our lives? 100%.
Yeah, everybody does.
Having some sort of understanding that we're going to have to find our common ground, and it takes time to find that, is important. But also having that push to do a little bit better than you expect of yourself is also very important.
Right.
So that goes for how you keep house. That goes for how in shape you are, how you live your life, or how hard you work at work. Always try to be a little bit better than you are.
Yeah.
And or find someone that helps you be better than you are.
Never settle.
No. And I am 100% tapped out on saying my piece.
Good deal. Well, I want to take this time to you know, after recording this episode on communication, several times throughout this, I don't know why, I've thought to myself, have we talked about communication before on the podcast? And maybe here and there, yes, but that's how important it is. You know, it's something that, like I said at the beginning of this, it's the base layer to any kind of relationship you have with someone. And I want to take the time, you know, I know we started this podcast to work on that and to not only between you and I, but just to maybe inspire somebody else to, hey, I could be better at this, or, you know,
To communicate, we want people to communicate more with each other.
And I want to say thank you for practicing communication with me for the 17th time now. You know, I appreciate it. It's done a lot for me, and I hope you could say the same.
I appreciate the thanks for that. It's been awesome, man. Honestly, I've had such a blast doing the podcast, and I tell you, the other day, sitting outside during that conversation was the first time I'd seen any real impact from sitting down and doing this consistently. But I noticed it very quickly that it was like, whew. I don't know. It's like you start to see things as an opportunity rather than a burden.
Right.
And that's a game changer.
That's powerful.
Rather than something making you feel so defensive and, you know, self-conscious, is now an opportunity to be better, all because we've just changed our lifestyle to trying to be better anyway. So something that would have made me self-conscious and defensive prior is now like, I don't know, everything we do is trying to get better. And so when that becomes a habit, then it's just an opportunity to change and to be better. And that has all come from a decision to sit down and try to change people's lives by just being more effective communicators. And that's powerful.
Yep.
Wouldn't want to be doing it with anybody else. I've been having a good time. Thank you to everyone that listens to this podcast and has been, you know, bringing it up to us recently. Like, hey, you guys still recording? How's the podcast going? Like, I love to hear it. I'm glad that, you know, we don't get a lot of communication from you guys as fans or listeners. And, you know, to hear that it matters to you in that sense, that you're looking for that next thing is awesome.
Yeah.
It's good motivation to keep it going.
And as always, I definitely don't want to leave out the people listening. You guys are so very important. I think that actually might be where we go with one of these next talks is the power of the listener. I know I mentioned that to you.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that one day.
I think it would be very interesting to see what people have to say about that, considering those people are the listeners. But yeah, until next time, I hope everyone takes any opportunity they can at being better.
Trying to be better. That's our moment for the day. All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening. I will see you next time.
We're signing off.
Later.